Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ogenekume Egu, and I manage the Kids Cluster at Union Bank. Today, we are pleased to have Tonye Faloughi-Ekezie speaking on homeschooling while working from home. Tonye is a wife, mother, and entrepreneur. As the head of TEEOF Media, she consults on media and entertainment projects for a range of clients. With the life lessons learned and the experience of being a mother, Tonye created the book series Ugo and Sim Sim, which is based on her children. She has now turned her entrepreneurial drive to not only raising awareness about children's content, but also about children with special needs. Tonye is no stranger to homeschooling, and it's a pleasure to have her here today to share some tips on how she has made it work for herself and her children. Just before I hand over to her, here's a reminder that if you have any questions, please drop them in the question box. We'll have a Q&A segment right after the presentation to answer all the questions. Over to you, Tonye.
Thank you so much for that wonderful intro. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to be with us here today. Shout out to those people who have locked themselves from their children. So let's get into this. I want to let you know that I'm approaching this from my own personal experience because, like you, I'm going through this right now as you are. So I'm sharing with you some of the things we've done and learned at home. And remember, this is about figuring out what will work for your individual family, your individual circumstance. So I said before, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a wife and mother of 2 children. Why do I get this opportunity to talk to you? Well, the past few years have been a steep learning curve for me, with 2 young children, the younger one of which has Down syndrome, learning delays, and an underlying heart condition. Don't worry, they're both doing very well and are now aged 4 and 6. So having a child with special needs has been an absolute blessing. And I really had to pay attention to early years learning and to primary school education because I've had to learn its components and understand its importance in setting up our children for their ability to succeed in the future. So I'm a parent like you, just in the thick of it. And I want you to remember that, yes, we're homeschooling while working from home, but homeschooling should be fun. Children learn so much better and want to work and learn if they are engaged and having fun. So no, I'm not a formal teacher, I'm not an educator. I like to call myself a specially abled parent. So let's get to the basics. Since the earliest we're likely to be back in physical school is maybe September, which is about 5 months minimum to go, I want to kind of just talk about the foundational elements of homeschooling. You need to think about your environment, your schedule, and your resources. The environment, because that involves both people as well as physical space. Your schedule, that's exactly as it sounds, bringing out the school, your homeschooling schedule that works for your family. And resources, now these are both home and external resources. So let's talk about environment. And as I said, there's 2 things to consider within that. You need to think about the people and the physical space. So you assess your landscape and you look at the people. So let's look at your children. Who are they? You need to get to know your children and understand what makes them tick, what motivates them, what puts them off. And if you've never had really an opportunity to do that before, this lockdown has made sure that we've had that opportunity to take a long, hard look at our children. Each child is blessed with an individual personality, strengths, and weaknesses. You need to figure out what your child likes and dislikes, what motivates them, and what turns them on. This is key in figuring out how to engage them to work. So let's take my son, Hugo, for example. He struggles with reading and reading comprehension. So we had to kind of approach it from a different angle. So rather than approaching it from a technical angle. We've approached it from a creative angle. How? Well, we try and make it fun. So instead of like getting a book, making them read and harping on about mistakes, I put all books down and we started creating stories verbally. So we just read stories, and of course, it's 6 years old. So that means a lot of the stories have a lot about poo-poo and farts and all those things. And we laugh, we giggle, find it fun. And that allows me to open the door to move from that creative element to more of the technical element of reading and reading comprehension. So, for example, that's a way to get that door open, to motivate your child to learn. And lo and behold, he initiates reading, and he's actually creating his own comic book series now. For my daughter, she's differently motivated. Her motivation is food and praise. So if there's something that's difficult for her, but she needs to do, for example, if you see on the screen, you see a little bottle, and we keep those to practice fine motor skills, opening and closing. Well, she doesn't want to do it, but we need to do it. We motivate her by dropping a couple of whole grain Cheerios into the bottle. And of course, she'll open it, get those things, eat it, and close it back. And we praise her, clap, hug, whatever, and mission accomplished. So the next, in terms of assessing your environment and people, is you. You need to figure out you. In this context, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What do you have patience for? Leave behind preconceived notions about teaching styles, your abilities and concepts of learning. Throw that out. You just need to be open to learn, because you will be learning to do this process, and you will discover a lot about yourself in this journey. You will learn, and it will be extremely rewarding. It will be a struggle, but it will be rewarding. And this is the mindset that you need to have. You need to be willing to learn and discover. So your support team, very, very, very important. No man is an island. You cannot do this on your own. The time and ability to commit to homeschooling, you need to look at that, and also think about what support system you have. Do you have a spouse, other family members? Is the school supporting? Is the lesson teacher supporting? Do you have a nanny or staff? You will need to figure this out. And obviously, when I talk about these people and these roles, a majority of them will be virtual because they're not coming to your home and you are not going to school at this time. So you will need some kind of support, whether physically or virtually. So let me give you an example. My nanny chose to stay with us during the lockdown, and there's no other staff. So my husband is picking up some of the slack, and during this lockdown, he's become a washerman, and he's in charge of piano lessons and football practice. My sister also chose to stay with us during the lockdown, and she supports with cooking in the house, and she does arts and craft lessons with the children. So that's allowed us to kind of spread the load a bit. That way, my role is teacher for both kids, and the nanny is able to implement the majority of the teaching with my younger child by following my guidelines. Why is this important? Well, this is really, really important because the support you have will dictate how much homeschooling you can do with the kid's baby. For example, if you are a single parent from home, working from home full time, then you'll be doing a little a day rather than a full-blown homeschool schedule. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can only do what you can do. So you can see the slide we have up now, and we're going to move to environment, your physical space and your working environment. The most important thing when you get down to the nitty-gritty of homeschooling is the children's learning environment. Whatever space you have, whether it's a dining table or you have a full playroom, needs to be set up for ease of learning, whatever type of curriculum, whether it's traditional, Montessori, or a mixture of the two. You do not need to buy a whole bunch of stuff or spend a lot of money to succeed there. That is not what we're saying. That is not what I'm encouraging you to do. I encourage you to use as much as you have already in your home. And of course, you'll need some creativity for that. The children will need a distinct designated homeschool work area. They need to make that distinction between home life and school life, even though everything is happening at home. So obviously you're limited by the space you have. If you look at it by age, older kids will need less space than younger kids, as younger ones need to be able to get up and move around. That's a programming of their DNA, and I know it's frustrating for us parents. You want them to sit still. Why can't you sit still? Why stay put? Why are you getting up? Sit down. For the younger ones, it's absolutely impossible because it's programmed into their DNA to move. It's a developmental thing for the brain that happens. So, for example, if you live in a 1 or 2 bed flat, or you're living in a bungalow, and you have a 1 bed, a parlor, or a kitchen, you might want to look at your parlor, like the dining area, the dining table specifically, to be the work area. You can create that space, and if you have more than one child, you know, one child sits on one end of the dining table, the other one sits on the other side, so they know that they have their territory. And then you use any shelving that you might have, or any additional tables that you might have around the site to put the things they need, the utensils and things they need, and create that as a learning environment. So put things on the wall, posters, magazine clippings, things that cheer up the space, and clearly demarcate it as the homeschool area. Now create the space for a certain amount of independence, so you don't have to constantly hover over them. So for example, we've converted, you see the slide that's up now, we've converted the children's playroom into a homeschool work area, mostly for my younger child, Simone. And Hugo is in a separate area. In fact, he shares my home office. Otherwise, his sister would be constantly hounding him because she's in that follow stage with her big brother. So this physical space of Simpsons was the playroom. And what I've done is, we're on the full Montessori system, and the children need to be able to choose and independently access the work. So I've tried to put all her tools down to her level and make them accessible for her to reach. Her books, the fine motor skills, the papers, the pens, her sensorial learning. She's able to pick them and take them. And for Hugo, he doesn't need so much space, so he's a little older, but he needs a computer because he's using some stuff online, but also he needs that designated space with shelving that at his height he needs to go and pick the work. My children cannot work in the same room, so again, you need to kind of figure out whether your children can share the same space or not. So let's move to the schedule. We have assessed our people, assessed the environment, we've got that down together, and we need to create a schedule for kids during this time where they're not going to physical school. And don't forget, it's not just about this term, it's about summer holidays too. Now, for everybody's sanity, a schedule is a must. Why? You see, having a regular routine during a period of anxiety and uncertainty helps with boosting mental health as it gives focus and direction. You will find that as time goes on, the children will be reminding you of the schedule. So now the schedule depends on a number of factors. Work. You need to know your schedule and your responsibilities to your employer or to your own business if you are still working, as you will still need to deliver your requirements, what's needed of you to your employer or to your business, and support. We talked about this a little earlier. The more support you have, the more time can be spent homeschooling. However, it's really appropriate to what is going on in your lives and in your family's life. So as I say, if you can only do 1 hour, 2 hours a day, that's absolutely fine. The key is consistency. So you keep that exact time every day, Monday to Friday, or if it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's at a certain time and it's consistent. So you need to think about this not just in summer term, but through to September. So just because you might not be following a program that fits everything into this term, it's fine. Extend it through the summer because the kids will still need something to do. There is no need to rush things you don't need to. Do not put yourself under unnecessary pressure. So the school setup. Are you working with the children's school whilst on lockdown? If working with the school, they have perhaps sent you a work plan and probably some kind of schedule. I can tell you will need to adapt that to suit your own family needs. I also want to define the meaning between virtual learning and distance learning because I'm not sure all schools and parents really understand the difference. So virtual learning is learning using the technology of your computer, phone, laptop, maybe you're using Google Classroom or Seesaw, Khan Academy, those kind of things that you're actually participating in a live Zoom class or accessing your work through the internet and through the computer. That tends to apply for the older children, and distance learning is more appropriate to younger children because a 3-year-old cannot enter Zoom and start learning on their own. It's just impossible. They need assistance. So a lot of their tools that they need and they learn in this homeschool manner is distance learning if they're learning with the school. So the school might send you principles they need to use or tell you to use certain materials. You are physically doing that in distance with the school. The ages of your children matter, as I've said. There is, even for the younger ones, there is an element of virtual because you're using those technologies, but again, they're not the ones initiating that. They can't really handle that on their own. Now, perhaps your school isn't offering virtual or distance learning, or what they're offering isn't really suitable for you, and so you're doing it on your own just as a motivated parent. That is great too. There is no wrong or right way to do this. There's no one size fits all. You have to work with what is best for your family. So let's look at some examples of some schedules that we've been using. There's a term time schedule and a holiday schedule. Yes, I do have a schedule even for the holiday time. The advantage of being at home is that you can involve more practical learning into the academic schedule as well. So during the term time, we're on a quite original, we're trying out the full-blown schedule with us, which is 8 to 3, Monday to Friday. We don't always achieve it, but we're going with that. And it is kind of working for us. And then I kind of adapt that for the holiday time because I always feel it's harder to get the children back into a schedule for school if they're just doing nothing but playing and watching tablets for however many weeks they're on holiday. So that's why I say the advantage of being at home is that you can involve more practical learning into your academic schedule, such as gardening, chores, cookery, DIY. You can even have them assist you in your job if that is feasible. Children actually love to work and feel like they have a sense of responsibility. You won't believe it. I mean, my children, they clean the door handles, the stairwell, the light switches, they sweep, they cook, they plant, they wash up. We might still have to go back and wash up after they wash up. So if you can see from the following slide, you can see them actually kind of participating. Was making chin chin, learned how to make chin chin. And Sim Sim was frying up some bacon and eggs for breakfast. Sorry, that's just the next slide. Yeah, so you can see that fully participating in that. So now we're on resources. We've got other things down, and you still need resources. You've got your environment schedule sorted, but you're unsure and about the effective methods of homeschooling. Don't worry, take it in your stride. There are quite a number of amazing resources online. Remember, this is not new. Some parents have been homeschooling their children for years. So it's not as if we're reinventing the wheel or inventing the wheel. You can go online and research and you will find a lot of support. So it's not impossible. I find for toddlers, or 0 to 5 years, the Montessori method is the most effective because they are more visual and physical learners, and you can also teach them a lot of practical life skills through the Montessori method. For a 6+, it really depends on where they've been schooling, what method the school used, and how long they've been doing that method. Note, we are parents and not trained teaching professionals, so it may be easier to follow the method used by the school, whether being supported by them or not. So at home, the resources you may have, maybe you will need, hopefully, internet and electricity for connectivity. A phone, tablet, computer, printer if you have it, or printables for the young ones. But all that aside, the most important thing is creativity. You can still homeschool without internet, electricity, phone, tablet, computer, printer. People were doing it before. So creativity is the most essential resource, with or without all the above. Example, we use a lot of packaging like egg cartons, toilet roll holders, cereal boxes, and cartons to make some of the resources we need. So up on the screen is an example of some, I don't even know how to say, abacuses, abaci. Anyway, 2 different counting methods. So I didn't realize that Montessori, you need a specific type of abacus, or they call it a bead frame. So the abacus on the right was the regular abacus that I had. But it's frustrating because if your older child is counting numbers beyond the abacus, how do you do that? So all I did was stuck numbers on the side, and then the first row of 1s, the second row of 10s, the third row of 100s, the fourth row is 1,000, the fifth row is 10,000s, the sixth row is 100,000, and the last row is 1 million. So you can work out calculations on higher numbers. Now, if you don't have the abacus, the one on the left, I made from a Union Bank box, actually, the cover of it, and I made holes on the side and stuck skewers through it. Now, the colored beads are not beads. I took colored straws and cut them and put them on the skewers and then stuck the labels on the numbers on the side, and it works perfectly. So that's just an example of not spending any money and using stuff I had around the home to assist in the homeschooling. External resources. If you have the ability to purchase, will determine some of the tools, but you do need to look at, do I have a budget to buy anything I may need? If you don't, it's still fine. There are some great online tools which are free. There are also some which you can pay for. I've put a list of external resources that we use that I found really, really useful. Twinkle, which is a parenting site. It's just full of all kinds of learning materials for different ages, abilities, different subject matters. Teachers pay teachers. Now, this is a site with teaching resources that are put up by teachers. So you're accessing people and learning tools from educators. Khan Academy and Khan Academy Kids is free. It's a foundational resource, absolutely amazing, and it can support your learning and be really helpful, particularly if you're not working with a school. It can really help set you up curriculum-wise, but also in process-wise. You don't have to think so much about, oh, what are we doing today? What is the program for next week? It's kind of all there for you. Seesaw is a journaling tool you can be using that between you and the school. So the school can upload the child's work, the child can do it on that platform, And you can also upload things to share with the teachers, send messages, and it's kind of a virtual board for you and the school to communicate. Teaching Station is another teacher's platform, and UNESCO has a great distance learning solution specific to different areas of the world, different cultures, which is why I put it here. So I found that very interesting. There's some specifically for our African continent, which we enjoyed. And of course, there's Google, YouTube, and apps. If you just do some searches within the subject matter or specifically what you want, you can find some real interesting stuff online. And I love Pinterest because that element of creativity is bang on there in Pinterest. That's why I learned how to make that Montessori bead frame. So all those kind of creative elements and educational elements are kind of combined when you look for those things on Pinterest, and there's how-tos, and you can do a lot of the things yourself, so you don't have to spend a lot of money. So I hope that I've made you think this is not an impossible task, that you can do this. There is no best way. You may think that you see a lot of perfect parents out there. That's not the truth. Everybody's struggling. You do what you can, and that is good enough. The key is to keep good mental health and physical health during this time. So families need to do what is right for them specifically. Give yourself a break. You know, your children will be fine. The most important thing is that they feel loved and nurtured. And I'll add one thing. Just remember to also take some time for yourself. Make out some designated time that's separate from your homeschooling time, your work time, that is just for you alone. It will really help to kind of recalibrate your mindset and help you to get the energy to keep doing this. So good luck. Handing over to you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Tonye, for that very informative session. I learned a lot personally. Some of our viewers have questions, which I would be taking one after the other. So someone says, how can I keep the activities interesting while I'm homeschooling? It seems like I've exhausted all the available options and materials. So what's your take on that?
So I totally get that. And that's why we try to work on certain subject matter or with certain tools for a week to 2 weeks. Then in fact, I only just did this because we've been homeschooling for about 3 weeks. So the first 2 weeks was a certain curriculum of tools that we were using for specific subject matter things we were learning. And then the next 2 weeks, you move on. So that means different materials, different things they are using and learning because of different subject matter. So I think if you look at it, not from the tools you're using, but more from the what you're studying with them or what they are studying, then you can adapt what you're using for that. For example, if you're looking at books and you're doing that, their bookshelf, try and adapt that bookshelf to change maybe on a weekly basis. So it's almost like they're rediscovering a new bookstore. So that's how I approach it.
Okay, thank you, Tonye. So someone else asked, my nephew of 14 years learns online. How do I ensure he's exposed to the right content while learning online? Or how do I control content that he has access to?
Well, this is something that I think all parents who have children that are mostly using the internet and digital platforms. So on the technical side, you need to obviously be able to go into the settings or create an interface that's specifically just for him that limits where he can search in on your computer, on the iPad or whatever device you're using. The other thing is that if you're working with a school, there are specific things he's meant to be looking at, specific things he's meant to be researching. So you just need to kind of have that conversation with him and kind of oversee, but without hovering, his work to ensure. You can't sit by a 14-year-old all day and be watching what he's doing. It's impossible. So it's to look at what the school has sent them, make sure you know specifically what he's meant to be doing, as well as making sure the technology is limited to those things he's meant to be researching and those avenues he's meant to be looking at. And also time, set a timer about, okay, he's meant to be set that timer, and when that time is done, he's to come off and move to something else. And that also sets a reminder for you to check where he's at as well.
Okay, so someone else asked, at what age should a child start homeschooling?
So we're calling this homeschooling because our kids are not going to school, so we're having to educate them at home. But I can tell you, from the moment you give birth, start homeschooling your child. And when I say homeschool, it's just be engaged with them. From the time I gave birth to both my children, we were reading books every day, whatever books. And it's not like they're going to read or understand, it's that engagement, and you're developing a lot. So I would say from the time they're born, you're engaging them in learning, because they're soaking up the world, they are absorbing everything. So you want to be involved in that absorption, make sure they're interacting with you. So I always believe that, in Nigeria, we might have this mentality of we drop our children at school, then our work is done. We can see now that does not work. We need to be engaged in their learning from the very beginning. Because my kids didn't go to school or to nursery or creche till after they were 2 years old. We worked at home. We used flashcards, sensorial stuff. We used YouTube, a lot of nursery rhymes, songs, and it just became part of our DNA in the household. And a great way, if you don't have so much time, everybody's under a lot of pressure, is at bedtime. Make 15 minutes available at bedtime to read a story with your children, to sing some nursery rhymes. And if that's all you're doing, that is good enough. Trust me, you can pack a lot into that 15 minutes, and it's real good time you can spend with your children, and they will look forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Tonye, for that. Someone else asked, I thought I had a support system in place, but it crumbled. How do I stop myself from taking out my frustrations on my kids? They demand my attention all the time, but I have to work.
Yeah, so I really feel your pain with that, and that's why this is not a one-sided system. That the schedule is going to be really important for you, because you don't have the support you had before. So that schedule is key. What are your work obligations? That is allowing you to see. So you need to make sure you're fulfilling that. Now, if you know what time you need to work, you can build your homeschool. Whether you do it before you work or after. I recommend doing it before you work, because children's minds are more engaged earlier in the day, and they can play or be watching TV or whatever when you work. It's hard to not get frustrated at your children. You're under a lot of pressure. So I also think that you need to kind of decompress and make sure you're assigning time to yourself. And if that time means locking yourself in the bathroom for 30 minutes and locking them in the bedroom, that's sharing that bathroom and putting them on TV or tablet for 30 minutes, then do that if that's what you need. I really don't want you to feel guilty. I don't want you to feel you're not doing a good job. Just scale things to fit your need. Do not keep to anybody else's timeline, because it's you that's living this, not them. So you need to do what's right for you. And if you are constantly frustrated, it's going to impact your household. So take care of you.
Okay. On creating a learning area, if I have no space in my house to create a learning area, what can I do instead?
Well, with what you have, you need to make that space. Even if you say you have no space, the children have a bedroom. Is there a corner of the bedroom that you can put a table or a small table in, or even use their bed as a learning environment that you can set up with a side table with the learning tools? use the space you have. You don't um, you don't have any other space, but you do need to demarcate a work area that you might have to set every day. So just make it something easy. If it's their bed, if it's their bedroom, if it's the parlor, just don't make it your bedroom. You need to separate them from you. But you do need to demarcate some kind of area that if you don't have the space, then you can take up and put down very.
Oh, all right. So this question says, my 5-year-old child feels lazy writing. He's very quick with visuals and audios. I and the mother have made a lot of efforts to bring him up to speed, but he's not doing it at the rate I expect. Sometimes I feel like he drags deliberately. I need to create a balance so that I don't demand and rely from him at his age. What do I do?
You answered your question, but I want to unpack some of those things you asked. When we're looking at milestones, they are just guidelines, they're averages, and they are not set in stone. So you need to kind of leave those behind and work with your individual child. So he's great visually, but he's struggling with the writing. That's not a problem. It will come in time. But rather saying that he can't do this or he's slow or he's lazy, he's not any of those things. He just is doing it in a different way. And children do know that if they can get away with something, they will keep pushing those boundaries. So you change your approach. You work with a subject matter visually with him. And you can take that visual element and then expand that learning with something sensorial. So rather than taking a pen and a paper and say, okay, let's practice your handwriting, don't do it that way. Start with different textures. So you can start with, get a little tray and put some sand on it. And with that, encourage him to maybe draw out a letter using his finger in the sand. Another way is with a mirror and some shaving cream. And then if you're focusing on the letter A that week or that day, then practice writing the A in the shaving cream. And what makes it more sensorial, more engaging, more visual, and it will encourage him and be a bridge step to then that pen and paper or pencil and paper writing. So you need to engage in a more sensorial and visual way to get him to engage in that handwriting, and that will reduce some of your frustrations as well. If you're able to access YouTube and go to Simone's Oasis, I have stuff specifically on that there, and that should be able to help you as well.
Thank you. My kids spend too much time watching TV, mostly cartoons. How can I reduce it, or is it helping mental development?
Okay, so I'm gonna divulge a secret now. I still watch cartoons at this age. I just love them. It's something I never grew out of. So if you're worried about them watching too much TV, or if you're worried about them spending too much on a tablet, so for us, the first day or two might be a bit of pain, but don't worry, persevere. But that doesn't mean you should discount the TV or tablet assisting you to learn. There are great things for younger kids and older kids. Plus, some of the research they will need to do will be in these media. So it's just fine balance. I think that also the physical things to engage around the house will attract them from nothing they've not watched TV that day. If there's a specific cartoon they really love, get them to create stories based on those cartoons. Let them watch an episode and then write their own story based on that episode. So you're engaging and supporting their learning through that medium that they love as well. Space helps them to understand that your role when you're operating in that space is teacher. And it's a constant conversation. But let's not forget that as a parent, you are their first teacher. From the moment they're born, you are actually the main and first teacher. So yes, we may not be formally trained, but you're the original teacher. So it's just understanding that you're in charge of the homeschooling now, and that physical demarcation of space will help you. It's a constant conversation.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Tonye, for a very, very, very insightful session. I hope you all found the session to be informative and you learned a lot today. So Union Bank has a kids segment, and we're working on a lot of exciting offers for our kids and our teenagers, which will be unveiling very, very soon. So please send us emails, contact us on through any of the channels showing on the screen right now. You can reach us through email. You can visit our website. You can also follow us on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Do stay well and safe. Thank you again.